All right, so welcome to another one for Al Cuerpo Boxing, which means to the body. So let's get with it. Let's talk some boxing. Man, I just did a long video in Spanish. Hopefully, I have the same energy to do it that long, but it was like half an hour, more or less, like 30, yeah, half an hour. And in that one, I talked about the Zepeda and Farmer fight. Man, that's the fight I really wanted to see, this weekend. And more importantly, that this was kind of like the go-to fight, obviously, to see how is Cepeda gonna do against Shakur Stevenson, right? Who's pretty much that's the code breaking that I think is at a threshold in boxing. Because if you can get through Shakur Stevenson, if you know how to break that code, that's gonna bring a lot of success for any star or any rising star, sorry. Just because that kid is so hard to hit. Okay. So, anyways, that, and then I also spoke on the return of Venado Lopez, who, for those of you that remember, he lost in a pretty good fight, man, against Pro Box's Angelo Leo. Um, I believe Angelo Leo. I think Angelo Leo is even younger than Venado Lopez. I think Angelo Leo is like 27 or 28, and Lopez is 31 or 32. But anyways, like Leo's uh his athleticism, even though I like both of these cats, but Angelo Leo's got a way better pedigree, obviously, because he started younger than Lopez. But Venado Lopez, actually, his background is football. I would even say almost like pro level football, because he started boxing late, like in his late. We started like 18 or 19. He's a late bloomer, kind of like Tevin Farmer, actually. Tevin Farmer, like guys like Gabriel Rosado, which ironically, Farmer and Rosado are both from Philly, right? So, but anyways, it's interesting how late bloomers they can actually go through real tough fights. I mean, be it Farmer or like Gabriel Rosado, who he himself called himself like the kingpin of gatekeepers. And I believe it, man. If anything, I know the Golovkin, it was like the Golovkin fight that he had years ago. Just taking that fight alone and enduring that type of damage, he proved that he's just a real deal gritty Philly fighter. So shout out to Gabe Rosado for that. And then also I talked about this recent fight. I believe it's at flyweight. It was at flyweight. It was Camilion Ayala, Angel Ayala. He's my tocayo, my twin name brethren from Mexico who went out to Japan to fight what's his name, Yabuki, but it's like Masamichi Yabuki, a guy with a pretty badass KO ratio, like more than 90% KO stoppages. He's about like 32 years of age versus the Cameleon, my twin bro, Ayala, who's 24 years old. He was the champion, and these guys they went to war. You guys need to check out that fight. Go on YouTube and type in Ayala versus Yabuki. Full fight if you can find it. If you like a bloodbath, you're gonna like this fight, man. So shout out to those two. The Japanese was able to, get Ayala down in rounds 1 and 2, and then even around 12. But around 12, I mean, they were taking so much damage, and of course the champion just took too much damage, and the ref had to stop it. But it was literally a bloodbath. The champion was actually having success in the mid rounds because there was like a head clash collision, accidental headbutt. And so when that happened, the Japanese just was feeling uncomfortable. And in those rounds, that's where the Mexican could, show a bit more grit and win those rounds. But more or less, the Mexican won like 3 rounds at best in this fight. So shout out to them. The Mexican didn't want to quit. The ref stopped it. It was sad to see because that young champion wanted to go the full 12, but safety first, man. It's a good thing that the ref did stop it for his own sake, for his own health sake. So that was that. But anyways, so man, let's talk about Cepeda versus Tevin Farmer. I should say William the Shrimp, El Camarón Cepeda versus Tevin Farmer. So check it out. Um, I think maybe Cepeda's game plan in this fight was to come out real strong in the first half, maybe a bit too strong in trying to just go for that knockout early. Not so much in like a barrage of shots in the first rounds, but more so like real heavy power punching shots from Cameron Cepeda's style, right? So, anyways, he wins the first round. Cepeda wins the first round, and then we go into the second round. In the second round, Cepeda hits Farmer with a real mean shot to the gut, man, like right dead center, man, a real nice body shot. And to Farmer's credit, as I said before, the dude's a warrior. Had a really good poker face in that second round. He was claiming that it was his arm. Perhaps I think he was telling his corner because, if obviously Farmer's smart, man. He doesn't want to like let the corner know that those rounds were real uncomfortable or that shot really did hurt him. Otherwise, the corner might stop the fight come like the mid half of the fight. So props to Tevin Farmer, man, for having a badass pro poker face in that second round. And so I think even like in the first half, it was like the fourth round that Farmer won, maybe two at most in the first half. But I had this fight 7-5 on favor of Zepeda, of course. Others had it 8-4, but whatever. I don't really care so much about that. It was still a convincing win, just like the first fight, right? The later half of the fight, the final championship rounds, even though it's not a championship fight, but the last round, 10-11, I think Cepeda just kind of coasted. He couldn't go that strong. Maybe he couldn't go that strong, but in those type of rounds, that's where you should finish strong. And I guess maybe his tank was just depleted, and that's why in those final rounds, Cepeda was able to land some really nice counterattacks, some really nice uppercuts too, man. Cepeda was going forward. And as I said before, man, Cepeda's got a chin, or maybe Farmer in those late rounds just can't crack as hard as he would have in the first half. But shout outs to Farmer for risking and taking those type of shots. I guess what I didn't like so much was, Farmer's clinching game in the first half, especially the first rounds, because when he was in danger, when Cepeda was taking him to the ropes or on the corner, instead of like pivoting out as like Shakur would, or at least like lunging out on the ropes as Shakur does, Farmer chooses to clinch in that, let the ref stop it, or well, anyways, that's Farmer's style, right? So how do we compare that to Shakur is what we need to strategize for that fight when it comes down to Cameron Cepeda versus Shakur Stevenson. Because my worry is that, Shakur Stevenson is a type of athlete that the best will come out of him when it's at the highest level. That just happens in the game. So Cepeda needs to be aware of that. I have a feeling what I don't want, man. I just don't want to see Cepeda like lunging in, whatever speed it is, just lunging in, even though he's his high guard up, that Shakur is gonna counter. He's gonna pepper him with even like simple 1-2 combinations. They don't even got to be hard. Just simple combinations that's gonna make him look good. And it's that the judges got to give him those points, right? So that's what I don't want. So it's gonna be very hard to try and break the Shakur code. Um, I mean, in theory, the best way to alleviate that, if Cepeda had head movement like as Julio Cesar Chavez, Cepeda would beat Shakur. Let me repeat that. If Cepeda had head movement in the bobbing and weaving like a Julio Cesar Chavez, he could definitely beat Shakur Stevenson, no problem. So what I want is what we at least need for, even if it's controversial, and I might sound like a selfish hater, but if we could bank, I was gonna say four, but if we can bank 5 solid rounds that Cepeda wins against Shakur Stevenson, then in theory, if those rounds are solidified and they look good, the judges might have two swing round theories. Just keep that in mind throughout the whole fight. We won't know what that is, but if that's the case, expect that some judges could be like a 7-5 in favor of Cepeda, which most without a doubt you're gonna have one judge giving it to Shakur, maybe 116, 112. This is again assuming Cepeda has a good fight, or you might see 114, a draw card. But we need, in theory, I'm not going to say so much a 116, a 112, and a 113 to one. I mean, sorry, 115 and 113 for Cepeda. Uh, Ideally, at best, maybe a 115 to 112 for I'm sorry, 115 to 113 for Cepeda on two cards at least to beat Shakur Stevenson. you know. But again, man, Shakur Stevenson, that's just that kid is really, really good on the back foot. Very elusive, very super athletic, man. So his leap back game, you know, is what's going to be challenging. Because remember, you also got to put a lot of effort going forward on trying to close that distance, and Shakur Stevenson can reciprocate that type of movement. So what am I getting at? I guess stamina, right? Because you don't have to do that much effort on a jump back like Shakur, whereas Cepeda, if he's going forward and also throwing a shot, that's more exertion on the body. That's more power you're exerting. So excuse me. So what we don't want is Cepeda to start winging shots, even if it's to the body, because Shakur is very sound on covering his bodyguard with his elbows, with the lower part of the muscle. So uh, I don't think those would affect Shakur. So we need to learn how to conserve our power punches when going forward. So that's why I'm saying, man, if Cepeda had badass head movement like Julio Cesar Chavez, that'll give him some success. And when he's closing the ring, when taking Shakur to the ropes, that's when Cepeda can use his power, his exertion for power punches. Conserve your energy in those times, and that's what we need to do. I like to say we because obviously I'm rooting for Cepeda. I want him to win. Raza all day. You guys know how I do, but it's a challenge, man, to break the Shakur code, right? So that's gonna be the big challenge. We'll do more videos down the line on how to do that, but that's like the fight that I'm really focusing on where I don't know how wide it will be on the odd makers, but obviously Cepeda's gonna be the underdog, right? Going against Shakur. Like I don't think anybody's gonna have Cepeda beating Shakur, but but Shakur hasn't fought anybody like Cepeda. And remember, judges hear things, man. We like to say that they're not influenced, but they are, of course, man. They follow boxing. So we don't want like another De Los Santos type of outcome, or even like that when he fought that Armenian guy. What was his name? Artem, something like that. Uh, Whatever, man. I can't knock on the game of you do what you got to do to win. I can't knock on that, man. It's boxing. It's based on scoring. So as far as like the point system, you can't hate on that. So that's what we have to do is we have to crack that point system. Because I don't obviously Cepeda cannot box Shakur Stevenson. Not at long range. I want to say that. You know? And again, I'll say that there's a lot of preference in boxing, right? We like swarming. Some people like swarmers, going forward on the attack. That's what the action. And of course, you got fans that are pure, they don't mind super defensive fights like Shakur style, right? Right. But again, Shakur's not a Floyd and Shakur's not a Terrence Crawford. So with that type of like circumstances and what's known in the game, what people hear, how that might influence the judges, it can, believe it or not, it can. Um, we might have something. We might have stuff to work on as far as strategy on what we need to do when we're closing the distance because trust me, we don't expect Zepeda to box Shakur from long range or at a distance. So obviously, most of us know that Zepeda is going to bring the fight to Shakur, and so again, that's what we need to prepare for in these upcoming months. That's what our breakdown videos got to do. How do we close that distance? I think one channel that's really good is the channel called BDA Boxing, BDA Boxing. It's a channel from Mexico. I think it's from Mexico. It's a good. They had a video actually on the Cepeda versus Farmer breakdown, right, for the rematch. So I'm more than sure maybe down the line they'll do their point of view on how Camarón Cepeda can beat or what does he need to do, man, to successfully close the ring and do successful attacks on the ropes against Shakur Stevenson. That's gonna be the ultimate test, and that's why that's the fight I want. If not, then Shakur probably move up another division. We won't get that fight, and then of course we still got good fights, right? We got Tank Davis still. Also, we got Lomachenko, and then we got Keyshawn Davis also in the same division with Camarón Cepeda. As a matter of fact, as I said before, and I told this to my other buddy, El Tinazo LT, another good YouTuber, really good boxing fan. He said that He too agrees. Sorry, that Keyshawn Davis hits harder than Shakur Stevenson, or perhaps that Keyshawn Davis is a harder fight for Zepeda than Shakur Stevenson as far as like taking damage. You know, um, at this point though, I would still favor Lomachenko to beat Zepeda. Tank Davis to beat Zepeda, maybe. I don't know. I mean, Tank didn't look so good against Lamont Roach, right? We saw some flaws in the Pitbull Cruz versus Tank Davis. You saw some success in closing the distance with some sneaky attacks from Leo Santa Cruz on Tank Davis. But at the same time, Tank Davis knows those things. He knows when he's making those mistakes and how does he knows when to adjust. So don't take those things in full consideration. I'm just giving examples that fighters do make mistakes, although with progression, you got to favor obviously Tank to still beat Cepeda. So that's what I got on this one, man. It looks like it was shorter, obviously, than the Spanish version. But let me know what you guys think, man. So catch me on the next one for another one on Al Cuerpo Boxing, which means to the body. And I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.